Okay, it's 11:30, so I think we will get started. Hello, my name is Cole Kopka. I'm the Assistant Director of PacTrans, the Pacific Northwest Transportation Consortium. We're excited to have you joining us today. We have three outstanding speakers who are going to talk about technology transfer through the lens of a specific partnership that leverages new technologies in an effort toward Vision Zero. Please notice that we have both the Q&A and chat functions enabled during this webinar. If you see a question in the Q&A box that you like, please click the thumbs up button and the questions will sort based on the number of likes. That'll kind of help us prioritize the questions that people are most interested in hearing. Let me briefly introduce our three speakers for the day. Dr. Yunhai Wang is a professor in transportation engineering in the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department at the University of Washington, and is also the director of PacTrans. Noah Budnick is the Senior Director of Programs and Operations for Together for Safer Roads, and Franz Lowenhers is the Principal Transportation Planner for the City of Bellevue. Dr. Wang is going to start us off, so without further ado, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the PacTrans webinar. Typically, PacTrans webinar features a particular research project with one speaker talking about the research. This is actually our new try. We want to talk about how we can partner up and transfer research into practice. So the topic today is partner up for smarter mobility and safer roads. Application of video analytics technologies. Traffic safety is a very important topic worldwide. So as you can see from this slide, we still have over 36,000 people killed on the roads every year. So constantly, we need to make our effort to improve roadway safety. And still, you see we have so many roadway kills, even after so many technology improvements on the vehicle side, roadway system design. So we have a lot of challenges in transportation safety. If you look at the pedestrian fatalities over the past years, we can see that this has been in a nice decreasing trend since 1988 until the lowest level in 2009, where there were about 4,109 people killed. But since then, we just see the numbers boosting up. Until 2019, there were 6,590 people killed in the road. So we need to see how we can improve our roadway safety, starting from looking at where the crashes occur. This particular slide shows that in urban area, we have about 32% of crash deaths happened in the intersection area. If you look at all kinds of crashes, there are about 40% occurred at intersections. 50% of serious crashes at intersections. So intersection is clearly an accident-prone area, but in intersection area, we have very little data. So how can we use new technologies to collect more data and do a better analysis so we can pinpoint the problem causing the crashes and make improvements? That's clearly a task of all the researchers and also transportation professionals. So Secretary Ellen Chao keep emphasizing that traffic safety is the #1 priority with US DOT. And PacTrans is the Region 10 University Transportation Center for Federal Region 10. And we certainly put a lot of efforts in improving safety and mobility. So here's the PacTrans website shown on the screen. We have a lot of ongoing projects and the completed projects. quite a lot of them are related to safety research. Maybe you have such experience. There are wonderful research completed, but these research results stay as a paper published somewhere and never actually picked up by the practitioners and implemented in practice. So PacTrans has this mission to really work with the industry and the agency partners, try to make improvements on roadway safety. PacTrans hosts annual research workshop. So this slide shows actually the picture of the 2015 traffic safety workshop. In this workshop, we attracted over 70 professionals talk about safety challenges in the region. The person in the green circle is actually Franz Lowenhurst, who is the main speaker for today. At this PacTrans safety workshop, we actually started the Vision Zero video analytics partnership. And you know, if your team needs to perform well, you need to find a very good team captain. So Franz is such a person, and we have been working together since then. And the video analytics partnerships went through phase 1, phase 2, and is going to start phase 3. Also through Franz's help, we've been working with the City of Bellevue for another project about curb space management, try to use our sensor technology to collect curb space usage data and improve the management of curbside space. And also through Franz, we got to know Noah, who is also a speaker for today. So I'm going to pass my microphone to Noah to talk about this particular partnership from his perspective. Noah, you are muted.
Okay, so you can't hear me say thank you, but thank you again. And good morning all. So I'm gonna try to share my screen here and tell you a little bit about Together for Safer Roads and set some context for this project that we partnered on with PacTrans and the City of Bellevue, and one of our members, a firm called Transoft, which specializes in road safety technology. So Together for Safer Roads is a nonprofit business coalition. We often describe ourselves as a corporate social accelerator. Sometimes I describe us as a philanthropic business coalition. And what we do is build public-private partnerships to prevent crashes and save lives. Our members are some of the largest companies in the world, you know, companies like AT&T, PepsiCo, UPS, Anheuser-Busch, Lyft, and a number of firms that work in transportation technology. We work in 3 program areas, and the work in Bellevue really focused in our Safer Cities area, where we work with local leaders on innovative road safety projects. This is really exciting for me because I've worked in the public and private sectors, and you know, for me, one of the things I've learned is that the public sector really sets the framework for a lot of road safety initiatives, you know, setting policies, passing laws, and of course the public sector, you know, builds the roads and builds safe streets. But there's also a lot that the private sector can do to, you know, achieve Vision Zero goals and other road safety initiatives. So, you know, working with an organization that brings those 2 parties together, you know, for me is really exciting because the private sector can really help kind of realize, you know, a lot of the goals of, you know, really great public sector initiatives. So you can see, you know, our members, as I mentioned, really run the gamut from fleets to technology to, you know, food service, beverage, transportation, of course, waste services. So having all those different perspectives really brings great insights into improving road safety, and of course, gets a lot of people involved in improving road safety. For me, another interesting thing about our work is that we're very much inspired by the global context of the Sustainable Development Goals created by the United Nations. And while we all work, I think, on the ground, really thinking about what are the specific things that can be done to change behavior and save lives, it also helps to relate those to a higher context, because when you're talking to individuals on the ground, it can be challenging to ask people to change their behavior and to relate it to a higher level goal, to the preventable nature of traffic deaths, to sustainable development goals. I think is a way to bring people together and help them feel like they're creating to a greater good. Now, the program at Together for Safer Roads that specifically brought us to Bellevue is through our technology work, and it's called the Global Entrepreneur Program. And every year we work with a small handful of technology startups that have promising road safety technologies. And 2 years ago, we started working with a firm called Brisk Synergies that developed amazing technology to measure near misses. And I think Brisk's success, one is demonstrated through the work that we're doing here, and also through the fact that they were acquired by Transoft Solutions, the larger technology firm that I mentioned as now our partner in this. So that's really a testament to the technology that Brisk developed. And what Brisk did was develop a technology that can measure near misses. And in a previous life of mine as a grassroots activist, we used to do near miss surveys where we would stand at an intersection with a clipboard and survey bike riders and pedestrians and ask them if they've ever had a near miss. And if you've ever ridden a bike and you're asked if you've had a near miss, the answer is probably yes, unfortunately. And so having this, more objective way to collect near miss data is incredible. And it's also incredible that it can be collected at scale. So, you'll hear about, the amount of footage and data that was brought into this. And it's really, a very powerful tool because, we believe that near misses are a leading indicator of dangerous streets. So what inspired Together for Safer Roads to partner with Bellevue is that Bellevue is a very technologically savvy city with a Department of Transportation that's very proactive about finding innovative technologies, and is also a Vision Zero city. So putting those together, what we believe at Together for Safer Roads is that if you can identify where near misses are happening, that allows you to get ahead of crashes and injuries and fatalities. You can take action before those fatalities occur by acting on the near miss data. And it's that data and that detail that Transoft provides through their technology that is incredibly actionable and is really inspiring. So I don't want to go on too much longer, but I'll share my contact information with everyone, and happy to follow up after this about Together for Safer Roads, or if I'm guessing a lot of people participating are at the university and are thinking about what to do next. And I'm always excited to learn about your studies and help explore ideas for where you can take your learning and apply it. What gets me out of bed every day is making changes on the roads to save lives, and that sort of motivation is very much realized through partnerships like this with the university and Bellevue and Transoft. So always happy to talk more about it, and I will stop my screen share now and I think pass it to Franz.
Thank you, Noah, and Dr. Wang, and and I will share screen. Excellent. So hopefully everyone can see the screen at this time. Thank you so much for the introduction and the opportunity to share with you the City of Bellevue's work in this space of Vision Zero. And as was mentioned previously, Bellevue is very much working in a number of different areas within the smart city realm. Dr. Wang made reference to our collaboration also in curbside management. And this graphic illustrates that, we are interested in leveraging fast evolving technologies, and the proliferation of CCTV cameras and AI developments and cloud computing really offers tremendous opportunities in this space to move along this maturity model of being ad hoc reactive to different situations to more optimized proactive. And we apply this model in all of our lines of business as it relates to our signal operations, which are 100% adaptive signal control, as well as these new uses of technology in curbside management and Vision Zero. Today's topic is on Vision Zero. And we have set for ourselves a commitment, a decade of action between now and 2030 to move towards zero fatalities and serious injuries on our streets. And we have, to move us in that direction, we've adopted a safe system-based approach that reflects the component elements of this graphic. And it's important to highlight on the perimeter of this graphic the two elements of data and partnerships. And really it comes down to bringing together thought leaders like Dr. Wang and Noah and then the great team at Transoft Solutions to tackle these challenging problems. Our intent in the data realm is to proactively address this problem, to get out ahead of crashes before they end up as serious injuries, fatalities. And this really is a marked departure from how a road safety work is traditionally done. Traditionally, we as practitioners in cities and state agencies, we rely on crash data. We send out our officers to investigate, to document those events and submit those into our database. And after a period of time, oftentimes in a city the size of Bellevue, which is about 150,000, takes about 5 years for that pattern to emerge. It doesn't happen rapidly enough for us to really understand where to intervene. And so we know that this is a reactive model, and we know, as Noah observed from his own personal experience riding a bicycle, that unfortunately close calls, near misses, however you might frame them, are far too common. And indeed, we frequently field communications like this one via Twitter at the City of Bellevue, where someone is flagging for us an instance like this one where they've observed a crash, and they're saying, this came as no surprise. This was a crash waiting to happen, because in so many instances this is a repeat of what happens from their view as close calls. Unfortunately, when you're a practitioner at a city and you receive communications like this one, it's informative as to where an issue is, but it doesn't give you actionable data, in the sense that we really don't understand all of the activities that led up to that particular scenario. And so what's really intriguing for us is having insight derived from these fast evolving technologies, cloud computing, AI, video analytics, that are able to be applied to our existing traffic cameras. As a city, you know, we have scarce resources, so relying on investments that are already in place allows for us to scale solutions. So we have cameras in place at more than half of our signalized intersections at this time. And this image illustrates how, with these new technologies and the view that is provided from these traffic cameras, when you process that video footage and you run that through the algorithm, the deep neural network algorithm, that those pixel patterns are able to be recognized as people walking, bicycling, driving, and so forth. So that presents some unique opportunities. And Bellevue has been, as Dr. Wang made reference to, actively involved in this since the end of 2015, and then since the end of 2015, when we announced this collaboration with PacTrans and Microsoft Corporation. And we were working with them for this two-year periods, 2016 to 18, using our cameras. And at the time, it was the starting point of that whole effort was object classification accuracy and turning movement counts. And we were able to use it for a specific use case reflected on the right side of that video, where we're able to evaluate the outcome of a demonstration bikeway that we placed on 108th Avenue Northeast through the center of our downtown. We were able to run before and after and determine what shifts in usage among those various road users were observed. And what we observed was people riding bicycles were feeling clearly more comfortable in that roadway, and so they migrated their usage to the street in the protected zone, and it didn't affect motor vehicles. And this kind of data was really influential when it came time to go into our council to then recommend a path forward for that corridor. And indeed, by virtue of this and other data, our council said this demonstration is an effective treatment. It generates usage. It doesn't impact motor vehicles significantly, and we can continue forward with version 2.0 refinement. And construction is underway this summer to invest in further refinements based on this data. So we had that partnership going. It never really materialized in a safety solution. And so when that partnership with Microsoft came to an end, we looked around and we were very fortunate to have Together for Safer Roads, David Brownstein and Noah Budnick were both instrumental in providing funding to Transoft Solutions and the team there, Charles Chung, Teresina Hignett, and Lana Samara, to help us in developing a safety solution. And Dr. Wang and his team similarly were actively involved in reviewing the data that we produced. I also want to acknowledge that Darcy Akers and Daniel Lai from the City of Bellevue's transportation team were also actively involved in this effort. Now, Bellevue is uniquely well suited to collaborate because we have, as I mentioned, made significant investments in our traffic camera system. They're all 360 high definition cameras, and we are rapidly moving towards 100% coverage at all of our signalized intersections. We have also upgraded our communication system and now have 10 gigabyte network speed. This serves as a pipeline to Transoft Solutions in this collaboration so that they were able to process that video feed and document those, not just the objects as people walking, bicycle, driving, but also their trajectories, and ultimately process that data into these categories. We end up with very detailed volume data, speed data, close call events, and we are also able to cross-reference that speed data with the posted speed limit to derive insights on where speeding behavior occurs. In our traffic management control center, that Transoft Solutions platform provides us with actionable insight from a safety perspective. what you see when you zoom in on these intersections is that detailed information on trajectories. You have heat maps reflecting where those critical conflicts are occurring at a given intersection, and which road user interactions are particularly problematic. Is it a northbound left conflict with a southbound through? That data is available, not only that road user interaction, but also what time of day is it occurring? And that insight really provides that information that helps us to flag where are those critical problems, and also suggests what kind of corrective action we might want to implement at that location. So I have a couple examples. These are screen captures. They're not as exciting to look at as video, but you know, I just to facilitate our movement through this series, what you can see in this example is the through movement. The white vehicle is traveling at 45 miles per hour, and they're needing to slow their vehicle to 36 miles to avoid a collision with a left turning vehicle. So these are the kind of events that are observed. Here's a pedestrian conflict as they move through the crosswalk. And here's a person riding a bicycle having to adjust their trajectory to avoid a collision. We also are able to derive from this platform speeding event data. What you can see is this is a vehicle that's traveling 63 miles per hour, 29 miles over the posted speed limit. The light is, as you can see, a yellow, and is now at the midpoint of their trajectory, a red light. The vehicle itself has increased their speed to 68 miles per hour at the midpoint. And so this is the kind of, these are the kind of events that get flagged in the system so that we end up with insight on where this kind of activity is occurring. From this partnership, we developed 3 technical reports that are on the City of Bellevue's webpage. And I encourage you to take a deeper dive, but I'm going to flag a couple elements. In report 1, our conflict report, what you'll see is aggregated data from these various intersections. Now, this reflects 1 week of data, 40 intersections, 31 of those were on our high injury network. And within that 1 week period, we had 4,500 hours of footage processed, representing 8.25 million road users. And what you can see in this image on the left is that the vast majority, not surprisingly, of road users are motorists, 97+% of all road users. And then in the middle one is the number of pedestrians, representing 200,000 road users, and in the far right, 8,000 being cyclists, people riding bicycles. And if you look at the map in detail, you can see the color coding provided shows where the concentration of those road users is on a scale, with the darkest color of maroon signaling where the greatest concentration of those road users is. So that's in report 1, as well as our conflict analysis. So here we see where are those most critical interactions. And there's a lot of ways to categorize road user interactions. And the vast majority of road users, as illustrated in the pyramid in orange, are really non-events. But at that top of the pyramid, 1.4% of all road user interactions, what you can find out is that there were 20,000 critical conflict events in that week period. And we use, and there are a number of different indicators for it, but in this study, we used an indicator known as post-encroachment time. And we used a standard of less than 2 seconds, which is the typical reaction time. So if you're within that less than 2 second window within which 2 objects are in the same space, then you're really at a point in terms of an interaction where they are very likely to become a collision. And so that was the indicator that we used. And again, we used that same color convention in the map, darkest maroon signaling where those most frequently occur. And then underlying that, you can see in the map is a relationship to our high injury network. And we really wanted to get a sense, and as you dig into the reports, you'll see that we really wanted insight on, does land use play a factor? Where within, whether it's on a high injury network or not, does that play in? We wanted to cross-reference this data with a number of contributing factors to see which of these really stood out as being notable. In report 2, you'll see our speeding analysis. On the map, you can see the same kind of color convention. Darkest maroon is where these speeding events are most frequently observed. And during that 1-week period, there were documented 870,000 speeding events. So 11% of drivers were speeding in that assessment period. And notably, it's difficult to see in the chart, 50% of those individuals who were speeding were traveling 11+ miles per hour over the posted speed limit. And then the third report really drills down into this is where the researchers like Dr. Wang and others, their insight comes to play, because what we wanted to derive as insight from this work was, is our conflict data points useful leading indicators in this assessment? And what we were able to do when all of this data was cross-referenced with our historic crash data is we were able to identify a pretty strong significant relationship between conflicts and crashes. And that's really helpful to us as we think through, can we leverage this as a platform to supplement our understanding of where to proactively intervene? Which leads to this case study that we wanted to flag for you. This is an intersection that leads into the Wilburton neighborhood in Bellevue, 124th Northeast 8th. And you can see here is a very typical turning movement count data that was derived from the Transoft platform. We knew going into this that this was an area where people had experienced crashes, as illustrated in the photo. And we had also received emails like this excerpt right here from residents indicating that they had observed that this particular intersection had problems for northbound left and southbound left drivers having to gauge when to make that movement, given that their particular signal phase was permissive. So they didn't have a protected phase. They had to gauge, and oftentimes that decision making resulted in a crash. So this was a quote from a resident. When we drilled into the data, all of these black dots represent road user interactions at this location. And in the red space, what you see is those instances where the speed of that the speed on the vertical axis and on the horizontal axis, post-encroachment time. So this is looking at less than 1.5 seconds. So that red space signals where critical conflicts also correspond to speeding events. So these are really problematic. And what we observe when we drill down into all those events is that indeed those are related to these kinds of events of a northbound or southbound left conflicting with a through movement. As illustrated here, this white vehicle is commencing their turn. The blue line, the through movement, the vehicle is moving along at 28 miles per hour. The driver of the through movement slows down to 22 miles per hour to allow the gap acceptance. Thankfully, they were paying attention and this did not result in a crash. But these are the kind of events that we observe from the video footage and the data derived from the algorithm. So in turn, we ended up changing the signal head here. Here shows that we had a permissive phasing. In the after period, we added a signal head. Now it's protected permissive left turn signal phasing. And this modification was relatively inexpensive, a $10,000 signal head and programming. And when we ran the assessment at this location after, what we observed is a 60+% reduction in critical conflicts for these left turn movements. This photo on the left shows the new signal head, and on the right is an email we received from a different Wilburton resident right out of the gate, saying this was short order after the change, really recognizing that we had made this change. And clearly they were conversant in Vision Zero. They've been tracking what we've been doing. They really commended us for this safety improvement. So it's gratifying for us as practitioners to hear this kind of favorable comment. So where do we go from here? Well, Bellevue is as other Vision Zero communities, developing an action plan. Our plan is founded on that safe system approach, and we'll be publishing that very likely next month. You'll see in it a number of different data strategies and actions that build upon the body of work that we've described here. Another item that I'm not going to be able to get into at length here, but is another study that builds on this work that we're doing, is a new partnership that we are just getting started with Microsoft again, and two other firms, Advanced Mobility Analytics and Jacobs Engineering, where we're going to be introducing in Bellevue 20 different leading pedestrian interval changes, and we're going to run a before and after assessment. So stay tuned for the results of that assessment. We'll look forward to sharing the results when that comes to fruition. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Happy to answer any follow-up questions.
Great, thanks, Franz. Okay, so we are gonna move into kind of the Q&A and discussion portion of this. And so we've got a few great questions. It looks like most of them thus far are kind of specifically geared toward the project itself. But as people start thinking about their questions, I thought maybe I would take an opportunity and just ask one that is a little bit more geared toward the technology transfer topic in general. Franz, you've had a lot of experience with this, and as I understand it, the idea for this kind of came from you being at conferences and having discussions with academics and learning about new AI technologies and methodologies and things like that. I wonder if you could share maybe some of the major challenges that you have found in taking things that you find that were generated from academia and moving them into practice.
Great question. Yeah. You know, I feel like we're on the shoulders of some tremendous research that stems all the way back to Lund University in Sweden. They really pioneered this body of work of conflict analytics, relying on you know, these events as leading indicators. But this approach developed in the 80s was, as Noah made reference to, was really people out there on the street corner making those observations. And that's not a scalable solution for a city with limited resources. So it's gratifying to see how this has progressed. The inspiration came to me when in 2015, I was at, actually it was 2014, I was at TRB and going through a poster session, and Nicolas Saunier of Montreal Polytechnique showed the application of this technology in the research realm using GoPro cameras. Again, an innovative approach, but not scalable as a city. So when Microsoft, when we began the discussion with Microsoft, you know, we started from the premise, can we use our existing camera infrastructure? That was the critical element for us to scale this as a solution, and that's why we are able to undertake a collaboration like this.
Great, thank you. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Cole, I could, sorry, just
Abs-
jump in and
Absolutely.
yeah, that bringing new solutions into practice, it takes, I think, a few key ingredients, and having folks at Bellevue and the camera system in place and the ability to work with data is critical. And then also having the private sector partners that are developing, the actual technologies, is another piece. And, here at Together for Safer Roads, sometimes we just play the role of matchmaker, of bringing people together, project managing, funding projects that we think can provide, breakthroughs, if you will. So, it's interesting. The private sector, has tremendous resources, and is interested in, safety among other social goods. And sometimes it just kind of takes an outside perspective to connect the dots and help match them up with the right partner on the public side.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I have two questions here that are kind of geared toward privacy. So considering that we're higher and higher camera resolution will enable us to better identify vehicles, potentially license plate, even the human characteristics of whoever's in the vehicle driving. Is there a concern with all of this data for privacy of road users, and potentially the way that this data could be used for law enforcement purposes?
Absolutely. I mean, there was a very lengthy process leading up to this project getting underway, as is typical for a lot of these smart city initiatives, with our attorneys, risk manager, ensuring compliance with our privacy policies, data retention. All of those figure prominently in any of these kinds of undertakings. So other cities that are wanting to do this need to budget accordingly in terms of the time and the lead up. For us, it was critical that that we were using the footage for counting purposes, not for personal identifiable information purposes. So these pixel patterns are really solely used to identify the object as a person walking, bicycling, and driving, and their movement through space and time. And so there's nothing that we looked at, and we made sure that that was the case with our agreement with Transoft Solutions.
Yeah, and we, yes, I think there's a very valid concern given the acceleration of technology, but also what we're seeing now is biases that are coming out of the technology and the imperfection of it, though others want to believe differently. And, on the project level, as Franz said, having the fine print specify, what it can be used for in a kind of legally binding agreement is very important. But, at a higher level, different cities and states deal with this in different ways, but a lot of cities that are using camera technology for traffic actually have laws that limit how that footage can be used and how long it can be kept for and who can access it. So most recently, we've seen a number of cities in the US ban facial recognition cameras and technology, which is, one response. Another is, I know, for example, in New York City, that's used red light enforcement cameras and speeding enforcement cameras for many years. Those laws specifically say that the footage that's collected, one, can only collect license plates, and two, can only be used to issue a very specific type of violation. And the footage can only be kept for a certain amount of time, and it cannot be used for other, other reasons that might raise privacy or civil rights concerns. So there's certainly ways, in the nation of laws that we still live in to address these things. So it doesn't mean that you can't do it. You can't take advantage of technology. We just need to be mindful of privacy and civil rights.
Great.
In addition to the regulations, also technical solutions that we could use. For example, you could process the signals at the edge level, like the on-site device, a lot of information, avoid even transferring to the server. So I think this is also an area under quick development. I think these things are all open for us to take advantage of the new technologies while make sure, privacy is protected.
Great, thank you. This next question is interesting. It's in its current application of this technology and methodology, is there a way to kind of deduce whether the fault of a near miss, an injury, or a fatality might be due to inattentiveness? The specific question is about inattentiveness of a pedestrian or a cyclist. Is that tracked? Should it be tracked? Can it be tracked?
I like to, I personally like to steer clear of assigning fault to people walking and bicycling. There's that definitely, there's a lot of windshield bias associated with that kind of language, because if you do take a safe system-based approach, you understand that the transportation and land use policy decisions we make and how we prioritize, in some cases, speed over safety, are really the underlying factors leading to crashes. So I think there's been ample research on the topic of pedestrian inattention as a contributing factor, and I think that we as an industry need to not contribute to that kind of language. And there's a lot of research out there. I would encourage all of us to really help this discussion along more broadly. So I don't want to, I think that's where I'd like to leave that response as opposed to commenting about fault.
Yeah, a lot of crash investigators, look at contributing factors, and when it comes to a serious or fatal crash, it's never one thing. So to kind of add to the to what Franz is saying, and from a I guess a moral standpoint, I really think about the primacy of the pedestrian and other vulnerable road users. As think about road users, those who have the potential to cause the most harm certainly bear the most responsibility in safeguarding others out there. But really in this work, looking at near misses, really provides, I think, rich enough information. As Franz showed, they were able to act on the data that was analyzed and produce some great safety improvements.
Yeah, I would say the current technology being applied is for detecting moving objects, tracking, and see if there are near-miss events. If we want to understand the intention of different roadway users, it will involve another kind of technology. It's called perceptive AI. I don't think that's part of the current system at this point, but certainly for autonomous driving, that kind of understanding of the surrounding environment and the roadway users' intention is important. So that particular research area is also under very quick development.
Great, thank you. This next one is again kind of about the current application of the technology and the methodology. Does it have the ability to, if there is actually a crash as opposed to just a near miss, to identify that and then automatically communicate that with law enforcement? Is that something it does? Is that something you've talked about it doing?
We have other methods by which we derive that insight. So it wasn't specifically designed for that purpose as an incident control or incident response system. We receive those alerts anytime a crash occurs from our 911 call center, and video is saved of all of those events and made available to to us to investigate, to the attorneys that are involved in those. Oftentimes that they lead to court cases. So, but this particular system was not designed as an incident response system. I certainly believe it could be, but that wasn't its intent.
And I know, go ahead, Yinhe.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the webinar, intersection area is accident prone, but we have very little data. You can imagine for a classical intersection detection design system, you normally have like loop detectors at the stop bar, maybe some loops in the middle of the link, like advanced loop system loop. You know almost nothing about what's going on inside the intersection. But if you think about, 40% of total crashes in the intersection area, how can we understand better? So I think this video analytics really generate a lot of very valuable data. It's likely to lead to new discoveries about real causal factors to intersection crashes. But if you use video for enforcement, normally video-based speed estimation may not be very accurate because that's based on like the kind of pixel movements. And this kind of pixel may equivalent to different distance in the real world. So you don't have a very good estimation of the real world distance. So I think using for enforcement, they're still distance away, and that's not the purpose of this kind of system. I think if we can address the data problem in the intersection area, we're likely to identify effective solutions like what the City of Bellevue has done. Like that particular street, like the 8th Street and the 124, adding the left turn signal, that benefit a lot of people. But previously, we don't know there are a lot of near-miss events, conflicts. So I think if we can address these things, the benefit of the system is quite obvious already.
And I know that with the Transoft technology, it can actually detect collisions, and in other deployments, that data is brought in. But the unique thing that it does is the near miss analysis, and you're going to have many more near misses. The Great Pyramid that Franz showed, where near misses can serve as a leading indicator of crashes, is I think the really valuable service that it provides. A lot of people debate, like what's the better data set to use, for safety analysis. And the more I talk about it, the more I feel like there isn't one kind of perfect or best data set that you, as I think Yinhe was alluding to, by bringing in new data and analyzing it with other data sets, you can really uncover new things. So having the near miss analysis with collision and injury and fatal analysis with other data sets is really what allows practitioners to come up with new insights and act on really specific interventions.
Great. Okay, so this question is there any concern that some of the events that are classified as near misses may actually be false positives and thus be suggesting intersection modifications that aren't actually necessary?
So the video footage that's processed ends up becoming, when I was showing the dashboard that we have in our TMC, those events end up being that are flagged as critical conflicts are stored as short video clips in that dashboard. So when you saw that chart with the red area in the upper left quadrant for Northeast 8th and 124th, and you saw all of those black dots signifying those critical conflicts that are involve higher speed vehicles. Those are clickable, and we're able to bring up the video event itself, which is really important because we don't want to abdicate our thought process to the black box. We want to be able to pull out the video footage and diagnose the contributing factors, some of which are not discernible just purely from algorithms. Some of them require, a human perspective, so an engineered planner perspective. So thankfully, the platform that was developed allows for that functionality. And if a false positive or negative is identified, it can be taken out of the data set. And it does happen. There certainly are those instances, but having looked at enough of these video clips, and it has been refined to a point now by virtue of Transoft's work in countries all over the world, cities all over the world, that the algorithm is very discerning about what constitutes a critical conflict.
Okay, so I guess I might clarify, and I'm not sure what the question asker was specifically asking, but it is an interesting question. When I read false positives, kind of what I was thinking is, are there times where a specific movement generates a lot of near miss counts, but it's very unlikely that there would ever actually be a real accident in that spot? Does that make sense?
So we would look at the video feed itself to determine. The step one of the process is the heat map, and at a macro level, we're able to see, and I showed the maps that help in the zeroing in process. So we see where the speeding events are, where the critical conflicts. That's at a macro level. Then we zero in on those individual intersections, and then we look at what are the predominant road user interactions that represent higher order critical conflicts. And maybe it is a northbound left and a southbound through. Then we drill down deeper further, and we look at the video events associated with those road user interactions. But it's only until we drill down through those sequences that we get to the point of then determining, okay, here is the issue at hand, and what are we going to do about it? We wouldn't just out of hand look at the dashboard at the highest level possible and make an investment decision.
Yeah, I think that's a great kind of example of how using multiple data sets is, what brings you to some, high impact actions, right? You don't want to just rely on a single data source. So I think, Cole, that kind of addresses that, that end of the question. And, in terms of false positives, like the other way of thinking about that question about false positives that are incidences that aren't actually near misses. I think that's an interesting element of machine learning, and that, with machine learning, the more data that runs through the system, the more refined and more accurate the analysis becomes. Again, we don't want to put blind faith in technology, but that's an attribute of that's kind of fact-checked, I guess, by the human analysis that Franz was describing. So, I'm definitely not saying that technology is perfect and we should just rely on our robot overlords to save us. But certainly, like, the scale at which this near miss data is collected with video is tremendous. And sure, there will be some events that aren't near misses, but when you're talking about tens of thousands of hours of video footage, you're going to have that, and they're going to be a very, very, very small percentage of the overall data set.
Yeah, I certainly agree with what Franz and Noah has mentioned. AI is not perfect. Just like a human would make mistake, and AI will make even more mistake in some scenarios. We need to provide the data for the computer to learn. Sometimes the data must be, labeled properly. If you did not really label everything correctly, the algorithm may not be learning the perfect facts. So when it operates to process the signal, it will generate both errors, like a false positive and a false negative. But if you have enough samples, like Noah mentioned, the standard deviation will reduce at the square root of the number of samples, right? So you look at tens of thousands of detected events. So the error is less likely to be a dominating factor leading to a wrong decision.
Right, great. So we still do have a little bit of time. If people still have questions, I would encourage you to type those in. I have a few more questions of my own, so in the meantime, I will ask those, but please feel free to keep bringing your questions. This next question is a question for you all, but then also, I guess, for those listening, it's also probably a little bit of a brainstorming thing. If people have ideas, they can put them in the chat. It's kind of about next steps. So I wonder what the next steps for this particular project and specific application are, and then also maybe a little bit more broadly, kind of how AI technologies might be implemented into roadway safety more broadly.
So I made reference to the fact that this project and fits within our overall safe system-based approach to achieve our Vision Zero goal, and that data partnerships both are central to that. Our next steps include, with this effort, we have a tremendous amount of data and insight on where conflicts are occurring. Our interest at this time is leveraging that insight to implement corrective improvements at those locations, and then evaluating, did we achieve the desired safety outcomes? And then refining accordingly. This approach of iterating is central to how we at the City of Bellevue improve. That's how we did our downtown demonstration bikeway project. We iterated, we studied it, we learned, and now we're building upon that body of knowledge. So that's from a Bellevue specific standpoint, but our intent is to go beyond. We see this tool as being useful more broadly in the industry. And if I were to crystal ball it and say, well, where would I like to see AI, video analytics in the safety realm 10 years from now? I would love to see data being ingested from autonomous vehicles, so vehicle to infrastructure, infrastructure to vehicle, that holy grail of data transfer, and that we as practitioners would have all of this data at our fingertips, so that as we all collectively make improvements at given locations, that we would be able to type into that Google version of whatever transportation practitioners are using at the time. I have a rural roadway with this kind of a geometry and these kinds of conditions, and here's the problem that we're experiencing. What are other places doing? And there would be this trusted data collaborative where we would all contribute data. We would be the makers of this trusted data collaborative, but we would also be the users of the system. And this is kind of I think a holy grail when we will get to zero at that point.
So from the PacTrans perspective, we do value the partnership with agencies and the companies. So this is both actually the channel for us to try out our new research results into practice and learn from the practice about how the problems we brought back may guide our new research. So the new partnership I mentioned earlier, like with the City of Bellevue for the curb space management, that one we have a new component. We actually have an intern student work for the City of Bellevue while trying out the UW research results in practice. So I feel, this kind of partnership is very beneficial for us. And we're really happy to see that it grows since the 2015 safety workshop, we get this started. And this is, getting a lot of very important milestones accomplished. And we also open up for new partnerships in other practice areas. This is something great. And certainly I see this kind of partnership relationship will be kept for future and benefit both the university side and the city side.
And I'll just jump in and say first, as like the funding organization, it's like really honestly, like it makes me really happy to hear about Franz talking about iterating and continuous improvement, because the fact is that even cities that set visionary goals like Vision Zero know that you don't achieve Vision Zero once. That you'll get there. You'll have a year where nobody dies and nobody's seriously injured in traffic. Amazing. So then what about next year and the year after that and the year after that? And that process of continuous learning is critical because cities, all transportation networks are dynamic. They're always changing. How we choose to move around is changing. Land use patterns are changing. The climate is changing. So we need to continually look at how safety is playing out on the roads. So yeah, having that mentality like in Bellevue is great. What's next? From Together for Safer Roads perspective, from this project, we take a lot of inspiration, and our members are also, looking at how does this scale? How do we go from Bellevue to Seattle to LA, right? Chicago, New York, right? Like how do the biggest cities around the world, Sao Paulo, Brazil, like how would they take a technology like this and put it into practice? And then internally Together for Safer Roads, our global entrepreneur program continues. So just like we had, Brisk Synergies and now Transoft as part of that, we are working with another set of technology startups, and we'll do that again, every year. So, that's a way that we will continue to foster innovation and, bring new life-saving technologies to the streets.
Right. So when you were talking about bringing it to other big cities, one of the things that occurred to me is for cities that maybe don't have the same network of traffic cameras, is there, I don't even know what it would look like, but is there some kind of solution where they could do something similar without having to make quite that investment? Or does it need to be cameras in that regard?
Yeah, it's a good question. And so part of our thinking early on in this is that we are doing a number of projects in Houston, and we worked with, Brisk Synergies, now Transoft, on a similar near miss analysis in Houston, but we just looked at, one corridor is about a half mile. And what really unlocked the project in Bellevue in connecting with Franz was their network of cameras in Bellevue and their staff that have worked with big data and know how to work with big data. So to bring this to other cities, with technology like Transoft, it's visual analytics, and it needs camera footage. There are definitely ways to, to get that if you don't have a network of cameras, although most big cities these days do. Like, I got news for everybody. If you're in a big city, you're on camera. It's the way it is. Whether you can get access to it, like that's an area where Together for Safer Roads might be able to bring some public-private partnerships together to, get access to footage, under certain, agreed upon, rules, if you will, about how it can be used. And then thinking into the future, we're really excited about vehicle camera technology. And, Franz mentioned this earlier, in that more and more vehicles do have exterior facing cameras. A lot of fleets are using those types of cameras for safety, for training, for liability reasons. And a number of our members in the technology space and the fleet space are interested in thinking about how that type of footage can be brought to bear. So a big question scaling of this, yes, is how you can scale the technology infrastructure for the footage, but there's more and more ways that that's being made available.
So there are actually new technologies. I mentioned the curb space management with the City of Bellevue. So that particular project did not really have the Ethernet internet support. So we have the new system that can collect video images, process at the device on site. It's called edge computing. And then we only send the detection results back to to the server for matching if this is the original vehicle parked there. So no, I think you have this kind of challenge in the city without good network support, like the internet support. You can try this new technology that we're working with the Bellevue City, and it looks like the detection and everything is working quite well.
Great. So my last question is kind of two-pronged, and it's basically if there are people listening who are interested in getting involved. So the first part would be from other agencies and or companies. If they were interested in getting involved in this, kind of how could they do that? And then the second part would be from more of an academic perspective. I know we have a number of students who are participating today. And if traffic safety is something that's of interest to them, is there a mechanism where they could get involved, do some research, potentially use some of the data on their academic work?
So I know that Transoft Solutions is on the call. Teresina is on the call. Our interest is in, providing an opportunity by which researchers can leverage this insight and build upon the body of work. So I would encourage students who are interested in the data set, who might want to drill into it, to reach out to Transoft Solutions on that. And I'm wondering, did Teresina work? Yes, so it looks like Teresina replied, we're coming up with a program to make this technology available to academia. So stay tuned. I think we all will benefit from the hive mind, the crowdsourcing that and insight that can be derived from additional researchers, NGOs, and manufacturers of automobile and others. The more we can do this together, the more likely we are to get to zero.
So I very clearly see the benefit of the data like Franz presented. At the intersection, if you get vehicle trajectory data, the conflict data, I think we could apply the data to a lot of new methods, try to understand better what's going on. And the new results may feed back to like the industry partners like Transoft, and they may consider taking the new algorithm into their software.
And I'll just throw my email address in the group chat, so it's at convenient for everybody. And as I said, our Global Entrepreneur Program, continues to work with technology startups, mentoring them, connecting them with our larger members. We have seen, it's even less than 10 years the way technology has changed transportation, and there's a lot of potential. So we welcome conversations on getting folks involved.
Great, and I see Franz also put his email address in there. Okay, so it doesn't look like we have any more questions from the crowd, and I have exhausted my question list. Does anyone have any final comments before we wrap up?
And there's
Oh, yes, we have one. As these technologies go mainstream, how should university curriculum change to take advantage of it? Typical CE graduate may not have the skills.
Actually, we have already revised our graduate education curriculum since about 2 years ago. We just see a lot of data applications in transportation engineering. So we added multiple data-related courses, and we require our graduate students to take those courses. So with the deepened understanding of the intersection safety, I think we can certainly enhance the education material to make sure the student understand these new technologies and will be able to use them in the future. So we have already observed our graduates to be taking a lot of jobs classically not part of transportation engineering. Like we see our students taking jobs from Amazon, from Zillow, from Uber. These are not transportation agency, transportation consulting firm. So I think this kind of partnership will gather a lot of new materials, and we will definitely incorporate these new materials into our education system.
And then the question asker clarified anything at the undergraduate level.
Undergraduate level education is more difficult to revise. I would say there are clear requirements from like the college, the department, corresponding accredited agencies. But we have already added like a transportation data management and analysis. And there was a new course started last quarter, I think, the AI applications in civil engineering. I would encourage our undergraduate students to just contact professors, get involved in the real world projects. It may really get into projects like the one we just presented today, or maybe the curb space management. And you can learn new skills, even those are not part of the classical education curriculum, which is relatively rigid and hard to change. But you can still gain the new knowledge, make yourself ready for the future practice.
I'll also put out there that Bellevue would welcome any one of you that are students who would like an internship where you might work with this data set. Unfortunately, I don't have a budget for you. So you're taking this upon yourself as a volunteer position. But this upcoming collaboration with Microsoft, Jacobs Engineering, and AMAG is going to be churning through a lot of data. And those of you who are maybe interested in this space of surrogate indicators, that would be a great avenue by which to meet some of the leading players in this space. So if you're interested, please reach out to me on the email that I've provided.
Great. I'd like to thank all three of you. This was, sorry, I got another quick question. Do you see freeway or rural applications for this technology, in particular related to non-intersection vehicle-to-vehicle or vehicle-to-infrastructure crashes?
Definitely, there are non-intersection related uses of this, and certainly there are DOTs out there that are interested in mounting this kind of a platform on mast arms over highway environments to learn about road user behavior. If you're interested in those various applications, you could reach out to Transoft Solutions. They are working with DOTs on those kinds of studies. But again, for us at Bellevue, we were wanting to leverage where we have cameras mounted today.
And I think that's a really interesting question. from a global perspective, in the developing world, cities, because of population and density, have dangerous traffic, but you also have a lot of dangerous roads, between communities, or in more rural areas where people are often like walking or riding bikes on roads. And so having technologies that can help collect data in those locations, and provide some actionable, objective data for government to act on to improve safety, I think is really critical.
Yeah, I think, I mean, Dr. Wang and his team, I know was involved a while back. Ruman, who was on this call, I'm not sure if he still is, using Mobileye technology from the vehicle itself to derive conflict events from buses. So that can give you quarter level data. What we were doing with this particular study was nodal based conflicts. So there are ways to use video intelligence to detect conflicts between the nodes.
Yes, so let me add one point here. I see this question from Mustafa at Washdad. I think the challenge at the rural area is really the communication. So if you transfer everything back to the server to process the video sequence, it's kind of challenging. So in this case, you need a kind of edge device to do most of the work locally, and then share the detection results back to implement all the functions based on those data.
Great. Okay, yes. Thank you, all three of you, very much. This was very interesting. It's always exciting to actually see as things evolve, when things actually make it to a finish line with some of these new applications and things like that. So thank you all for taking the time to share and then allow us to discuss this with you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for Noah to help us deliver this webinar.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.